Hello everyone, I hope you can all hear us now. Welcome to this afternoon session for the OCA and Trade Union webinar. My name is Amy and I'm going to be your facilitator for the day. Our panel for today is...
Hello, my name is Mike Pettigrew. I am the Regional Director for Cape. I'm also the Chair of the OCA.
I'm Tommy Campbell, Regional Organiser of United Union.
Jake Malloy, Regional Organiser with RMT.
Erik Jan Bijvank, Regional MD for Stork and Vice Chair of the OCA.
And I'm Irene Bruce, I'm Employee Engagement Manager for Wood.
We'll be starting shortly, so please use the chat function to send any questions that you might have. I've picked up everybody with your comments. I'm not being able to hear sound, so hopefully that's resolved now. Any questions you send through will be anonymised. I'm going to show the OCA ballot explainer video next, which will last for around 8 minutes. Thereafter, we'll start accepting questions. Thank you, everyone. I've received a few questions so far, so we'll just start by asking Irene, will other ad hoc personnel who have not been selected for a permanent retained contract be on 0-hour contracts?
The answer to that one is you will remain on the same contract as you're currently on with your current employer. So there will be no change.
Okay, have another one here. If I leave employment between now and the date of acceptance, will I be entitled to any payment? Jake, do you want to answer that one?
No, because the allocation of the increase will be on the anniversary date, which will be 1st August. So it'll be, if you're in employment after the 1st August, you'll be paid the increase.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, just bear with me. Will the £80 reassignment payment be paid every day after you have left rotation? Sorry, I'll start again. Will the £80 reassignment payment be paid every day after you leave rotation, after your leave rotation has ended, or just when you are meant to be on your offshore rotation?
I can take that one.
Irene?
The £80 reassignment will be paid to you for each day after your final trip has ended and your field break for that trip has then ended. You will be paid the £80 until you are then assigned a new contract.
Okay. We've received a question which is, who is here today to represent Petrofac and Sparrows? So would you like to answer that one as well, Irene?
Yes, certainly. So we have today in the room, we have got representatives from Cape, from Stork and from Wood, but we're here representing OCA. So any questions that come across can be answered by any of us today, as this is an OCA webinar and it's not about an individual company.
Okay, another one here. Why is the offer not backdated until April 2018? Who wants to take that one?
I'll answer that.
Tommy, I'll take that one.
I think it's important that we tried to have the 1st of April as the anniversary date in the previous ballot, consultative ballot, and because that was rejected, we're now in that new situation with the new offer. And clearly, given the legal position that only when an agreement is reached is it effective from then, will only be paid to those who are in the current work at that time, as Jake has said earlier. So that's why the 1st of August has been selected. So our ballot's going to run up to the 20th of July, and that gives time then, basically, should the outcome of the ballot be one of acceptance, even if that's a reluctant acceptance, then everybody who's in employment on the 1st of August will be entitled to that increase. And that's the reason for that.
Thank you. Another question we've received in is, why are salary packages being incorporated into the new OCPA?
I'll give an answer to that. Salary personnel was part of the OCA for a long time already, and I think I'm right in saying from the beginning. However, salary personnel have not been clearly identified within the agreement before. Given the amount of people in salaried contracts, we decided it was a good idea to at least provide clarity around the structure and the way of calculation of the base element of the salaries, so that people had a clear insight into what their compensation was made up of. Plus, it would provide a clearly identified position for salaried personnel within the agreement.
Another question we've got coming through now is, what is the per annum percentage increase for the first year 2017-18 since the pay is not being backdated to April?
Well, I mean, so we're talking about this 3.3%, but if it was amortized over the year, is that the question? I guess.
I believe so, yeah.
So what just
That it comes out at 2.2%, I think, for the full year, but with it being applicable from the 1st of August, it represents a 3.3% increase in rate, and therefore that 3.3% from the 1st of August then means a higher hourly rate, which then means that when it comes to April 9, 2019, it's an even higher rate that the next year's increase is going on to.
Thank you. I've had another question, and it's about training pay. The 4 hours training rate, this individual has been advised that the 4 hour training rate will only be paid to an employee from when they're in Aberdeen before going offshore.
I can take that one. The 4 hours training rate is to be paid to anyone undertaking training that lasts less than 4 hours. The same as at the moment, anyone that's undertaking training at the moment will receive an 8 hour payment. We've reintroduced the 4 hour payment to recognise the fact that there's a number of training courses that are taking far less than 8 hours, considered the CBT type training, etc. So therefore, the 4 hour payment will cover any courses that last from 1 hour to 4 hours. Anything over 4 will be paid at the minimum of 8 hours.
I think it would be important to emphasise that it's not about it being based in Aberdeen, it's about you undertaking the course and completing it, and then you're guaranteed the payment.
Yes.
And this is particularly introduced because there are more CBT training courses available today that you can do from your home, and that makes it a lot easier to complete these trainings and allows us to have an appropriate payment for that.
Okay, so there's a question here. What happens if this deal is rejected?
Tommy or Jake, do you want to take it?
Well, if it's rejected, we'll be in a situation of failing to agree. The employers have indicated that this is the final offer, and we will be emphasising when the ballot paper comes out that rejection of this means that we're moving into an industrial action situation, something I think you should all consider very seriously. But that's the scenario we're in, that's the reality of it.
I think it is important that the vote, when it comes out on the 18th of June, right up to the 20th of July, that everybody participates in that vote. The average turnout in the last few ballots has been in around about 50%. We would rather that people vote. It's for you to decide which way you vote. But it's important to recognise that last year the matter dragged itself on, and people were indicating that they were interested in industrial action. But the reality was, when the ballot for industrial action, I'm talking about the legal one, went out, people had drastically changed their minds, which is why the action never took place. So this is a time to be very, very serious. If it's a case that you're not necessarily happy with the offer, but reluctantly feel that you'd rather accept it than go down the road of industrial action, then obviously it's for you to consider and exercise your vote accordingly. But it's time to be serious this time. We want to get it, if possible, over the line, which is why the unions are saying it's not an unreasonable offer. That's the reason why we're saying, because it's the final offer, that we're not uncomfortable with it, and therefore we're recommending it to you, that if it's accepted on the 20th of July, that nobody then loses out come the 1st of August. And I think it's time now to be really serious.
And I think it also gives you this 2 years of stability, because we've been balloting and voting for what seems like an eternity now, since 2015-16 dispute and so on. So this will give us a clear space where we can engage with the offshore workforce better. Likewise, you can engage with us, and we in turn can get you sitting down with your respective employers, the OCA and the industry generally. So that's why we're making the recommendation for that acceptance.
I think it's important what Jake's saying here, that to also remember that if the offer is accepted, there's other matters that we then get addressing in terms of the review of the overall agreement itself, but more importantly, addressing this issue of the retained contracts, where there's a commitment to move towards employing, at least in the first instance, around about 600. It would be the trade union's objective to eradicate any attempt to go down a different road of zero-hour contracts and short-term working, and move towards a more permanent retained contract, which, as Jake has rightly said, that brings stability then into the frame, and it means then that people can look to the future.
Even though that's not been asked directly, I'll make a point on top of this. We are here also to confirm that we're serious about this retained contract model. It is something that we've discussed in all earnest over the last few months, and we've put some numbers to our commitment to getting people on that. Now, the 600, as far as I'm concerned, is the minimum, but it's something that we're serious about. We want to get that done. We want to get that going. We would like to offer that stability to take people off rolling notice and give you more stability in terms of your employment with us. And it also gives us a chance to speak to our clients to get some planning stability in our work, which is ultimately good for I think the industry, for the clients, for us, and for yourself. So we're really serious about making this happen. And it's one of the reasons why I'm sitting here today, to look you in the eye in the way I can, and tell you this is for real.
So following on from that, we've received a question which is about how many employees is each individual member company committing to it, to the permanent retained contract.
Well, I mean, it'd be fair to say that it's down to each individual employer and to the employment the contracts they have with their customers, to be honest. I think that it's, I came into this industry 2-3 years ago, and I was aware that people were being treated as a commodity in the difficult times in which the industry found itself. And I think that the permanent retained contract is a genuine commitment by employers to try and stop that happening, to stop people who are being punished for using tactics like rolling notice, so that they can't get themselves a pension because they can't demonstrate to the bank that they have a permanent contract. This way, and nobody's going to be forced onto this contract, it's going to be an option, but this way will give people permanency of employment, and that's the intent.
There is a question here on the permanent retained contract again, about the 1/3 payment and how that was calculated.
I can take that if you want to. So when we were looking at the permanent retained contract, we were looking at how would we set up the payment methods, what would that look like? So we took what is an average salary, and that is made up of your hours worked, of your field break payment, and of your holiday payment as well. Turn that into a salary, and that is the same as what forms your base salary as part of the OCA partnership agreement now. We then looked at how would we then separate that out for the permanent retained contract, and we thought that 1/3 of earnings to then be paid on either a weekly basis or a monthly basis, depending on how your employer's payroll setup actually is. If that's then paid to you on a week-by-week or month-by-month basis regardless, you're then receiving a 2/3 payment, so that's a day rate equivalent to 2/3 of your annual salary, and that will be paid to you for every day that you then work offshore. If you're on holiday, you receive the same payment as you would if you were offshore. There's obviously the added benefit of the holiday top-up payment for any hours, any additional payments that you've received over the previous 12-week period. And then once you have completed 154 days offshore, you will then go on to an increased rate for day 155 and beyond. So that is the equivalent of what you would be getting at the moment should you be working any additional days. So just to take that back through you again, it's 1/3 of your annual earnings is paid to you on a week-by-week or month-by-month basis, depending on how your employer sets up their payroll. And then a 2/3 equivalent will be paid to you as a day rate for every day that you work offshore and for every day that you're on holiday, in your 28 days holidays. And then for every day that you work beyond the 154 days, you'll be paid an enhanced rate, which is equivalent to the salary divided down by 182. I hope that answers the question.
Another question here, which is, are the unions advising acceptance of the deal?
Yeah, for the reasons mentioned earlier, we think it's a reasonable deal in the current climate. We think it's given us an opportunity to bring about some stability, give us a bit of breathing space, if you like, to try and look at increasing the permanent retained contract numbers, see how it works, test the water, if you like, and see if we cannot develop that still further. There's a commitment from the employers to have regular meetings with employees. You guys, you need to step forward in that respect and get involved, and we'll be meeting on a regular basis to talk about the application, interpretation of the new OCPA. So yeah, we're recommending acceptance for all these reasons, and most importantly, to give you a bit of security of employment, a bit of sustainability, and a bit of breathing space to reflect on what we've done this last couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's important that we echo that all the three unions are going to be and will be recommending acceptance. As I said earlier, that even if members reluctantly accept the offer, it's not then that you're not going to hear anything for another few years in terms of the next pay claim. We're going to be meeting on a regular basis. There's a lot of shop stewards have now been elected. They're going to be meeting regular as part of the OCA agreement. And there are lots of matters to be discussed. And that gives a good forum then for issues that don't have to wait for the annual review or the pay and conditions claim to be submitted. So I think it's absolutely essential that you give yourselves that breathing space and your representatives as well. And as Jake has said, this is the full and final offer from the OCA, and we certainly recommend it given the current economic climate that we're in.
Just another aspect of this is, as I said, to give you an opportunity to reflect on it. I'll give you an opportunity to see how this could work for everybody as well. I regularly hear for some of the guys out there from about my age that they don't want to be out there for 182 days. The permanent retained contract model gives the ability for flexible working, and I know there's quite a few of you have indicated that you might be looking towards that. So it's not just moving people from ad hoc into the permanent retained contract. The potential is there for moving from core into a permanent retained contract and creating spaces. So there can be movement both ways. But as I say, it's a new model, and it's going to need time to embed. And this is why we're giving it this 2-year space to try and model it and ensure that it's working to your benefit. That's what it's all about.
We're getting quite a few of similar questions coming in. So one of them is going to be, when is the process going to start for selecting people to go on a permanently retained contract? So when should employees start hearing about that?
I think the process will start right after we have agreement on the way forward. So if the ballot is successful and is accepted, then nothing is stopping us from starting the process from that point on.
And it's slightly linked to the previous answer I gave. The 600 wasn't just jumped from nowhere. We sat in a room and worked out between the OCA companies which contracts this could potentially apply to. So there has been some work done which arrived at that 600 to start with.
I can just add to that, certainly from my employer's point of view, we've started looking at it already. We have got one client that's very interested in this model, and we will be discussing that with the trade unions in the very near future to get it moving forward.
Sorry, I'm just going through all your questions just now.
So many of them.
There's quite a few.
That's good.
One here, quite often people have their check-in time changed after they've travelled. What is being done to address this?
I can take that one, Amy. So the check-in time is obviously allocated to us by the operator. It's something that we review regularly in our conversations with the operator to try and help resolve the issues and that there. We recognise how difficult it is once you've started travelling, We do our best to try and minimise these as much as possible. However, as you can appreciate, it's not always within our control. It doesn't form part of the offer that we're talking around today, but if it's something that you would like addressed more formally, if you could contact your own company's HR team, then we can take that forward.
Thank you. We've got another one in here, and I think it's a follow-up question to one of your answers from earlier, which is somebody asking to confirm with you, all days worked outside of a normal 3 and 3 rota, including extra time offshore and courses, would accrue additional holidays. I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Would accrue additional holidays?
Yeah.
Well, the holiday pay calculation is based on all hours, all payments received in the 12 weeks prior to the date that you take your holidays. So each employing company should have a payroll set up that calculates the payments that you've received in the 12 weeks prior to get what your average earnings as part of the EU legislation on holiday pay. If this is something, it's a specific question or query for yourself, then again, I would advise that you you take it to your own company's HR department and ask them to help explain how it's calculated for you. Anything from you guys? Or?
That line with Euro holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that legislation 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important that if anybody has any doubt at all about the method of calculation on their holiday pay, that they should raise that in the first instance, as a pay query with their own employer. And if necessary, if they need any advice, they should contact their union as well for advice on it. But it's now meant to be that's calculated on your average pay, on the best of the average pay of the previous 12 weeks.
We've received another question along the lines of holidays, which is when it comes to taking holidays, we're asked to take them in a 3-week block, but I imagine the answer to this is also that would be a matter for your individual employer.
Yeah, again, it doesn't form part of this pay claim that we're here to talk about today, but it should be addressed with your own individual employer.
Somebody else asking here about holidays again on the permanent retained contract and saying if they didn't want to take the 28 days holiday, would they be paid a higher rate?
The holidays are built into the rota for the permanent retained contract to allow for 28 days. It is up to each individual to request those 28 days, and across all employers, and I'm looking at my trade union colleagues here, I would guess that everybody would be saying the same and encouraging you to take your 28 days holidays. Within the permanent retained contract, you would only receive the higher rate once you have worked 154 days. Tommy?
Yeah, I think it's important that workers take holidays. We've fought for many years for holiday entitlement, and that where appropriate, those holidays should be taken when maybe you were expected to be working. Because on that basis, if everybody's doing that, it will create employment for others, because that work would then have to be covered rather than cashing in holidays, which I think most of the companies have now put an end to in terms of their policies. So it's absolutely essential that with your holiday entitlement that you book it and book it off, so that then therefore somebody will come on to the rota basically to cover on a back-to-back basis. So it creates employment.
I think the holiday issue should be couched in terms of what the directive was. The directive was a health and safety directive. It was there to look after your occupational health. So I would say take your rest, take your holiday. But we also appreciate that everybody's got different priorities. People at our age looking after the grandkids, the young guys want to work, then that's entirely your prerogative. The contract facilitates that if that's what your drive is. But it's about health and safety, it's about your occupational health, that's what it's about.
And just to add in there, for the permanent retained contract, it's not necessarily on any fixed rotation. So holidays should be submitted to ensure that you're then not called to go to work during a period of time that you want to take some time off and away from work. The permanent retained contract has been set up, as Jake mentioned earlier, to increase flexibility as well as stability for the industry. And it may be that you are set up with a contract that is less than the 154 days, and that's something that's mutually agreed between both your employer and yourself. But the holidays itself, should you wish to take time away from work, then you still need to submit your holidays, one, to receive payment, but two, to also then ensure that you're not contacted for work during that time.
Somebody else asking more questions about holidays here, and I don't think it's actually directed at permanent to change contract. I think by the looks of things, I think it's for core people. The 28 days holiday has been mentioned a few times. Are they entitled to take the 28 days off with pay?
So 28 days is the holiday entitlement that is built into the offshore partnership agreement. It's built in various forms. If you're on a 3-3 rotation, that includes 21 days from offshore time, and 7 days would then be paid from your field break time. Or for those that are on a 2-2 rota, it's 14 days from offshore time and 14 days from your field break time. Each individual employer may also have a different setup depending on the rotas that they operate. For example, those that are on a 2-3 rota, the holidays are already built into your rota and your salary that you receive there. I'm only speaking from my own organisation and the experience that I've got there. So again, if this is an individual query, I'd advise you to take that up with your own company's HR team.
I think there's another important point there, Amy, which we discovered as part of this consultation, this engagement. There's 18 different applications of holiday and leave cycle and how it all works, and that's another reason for this period of stability, to try and get that mess sorted out. We at this minute in time, we're unable to tell you really in real terms, without having the specifics of your employer and your client, the client you're working for, how it should work, because there's so many different variations. We need a bit of breathing space to get that sorted out, I think.
So we'll take a break from holiday questions, and we'll go into, is there a limit to the number of days that employees would receive the £80 retainer payment?
In theory, I don't think so. In theory, I don't think so. So this is the 80 days payment is put into place to allow us to provide for a longer period of keeping people on the books and into our employment. Obviously, there is a limit to that in practical terms, but the agreement as such does not provide for a maximum to that.
We're also getting a few questions in about our reference to the terminology of the current climate, and that we've been mentioning that for quite a few years. So I think it might be worth addressing that just now as well.
Yeah, well, the current climate, if it's a subtle question, I suspect, given that we're back up to $70 odd a barrel. And I know that a lot of people out there think that the current climate was $40 a barrel. The current climate is the pressure that's been brought on the employers in this room and us from the operators. They in turn have been constrained on the budgets because the North Sea is considered an expensive region in comparison with others. And again, that's why we need this bit of breathing space. We need to be able to sit down with the clients and engage on a broader base and sort this whole issue out, because we've all got different interpretations of what the current climate actually means. I suspect the person asking the question thinks we're in a different climate. We're in a different climate in terms of the oil price, but we're in a different climate in terms of the pressures which we all face coming from the industry at this minute in time.
And I think that the very fact that we're sitting around this table and having this conversation in this composition is a reflection of how we've been able to deal collectively with the challenges that we've seen in what is the current climate, which has seen significant pressures over the last couple of years. Having this conversation like this, I think, is a big step forward to what we've seen in the past. One of the solutions that we provide is the permanent retained contract. It's one of the solutions, and like I said before, one of the reasons that we're doing this is it gives us a chance to engage with our operator clients to see if we can get more stability in the work planning. Because ultimately, if we get more stability in the work planning, it makes it much easier for us to get people on the books and in employment, because we know the work is coming. So it's a knock-on effect that this will have, and it's the fact that we're having this conversation, that there is an understanding that these solutions need to be found. I think the next comment I'd like to make is building on from what Jake was just saying. Yes, the oil price is higher, but also yes, the operators have a choice as to where they spend their money, and they will spend their money where the biggest return is to be had. And that is forever. So what the last few years has done has shown that there is to be a business case for any operator to make an investment into an environment, into an industry, into a location, and it's in all our interests to make sure that we are that basin of choice that gives us the best guarantee for the longest life of the assets and ultimately employment within the North Sea.
I mean, from a macro level, you can all read newspapers and you can all read magazines, but the reality is the North Sea is a different place than it was 10 years ago. There is now 60 operators in the North Sea, and for people to make money on these small basins that are left, is late life operators come in, and their operating model is a low cost operating model, and they have to make money with these small basins, these short life fields. So there is still 40 years left potentially in the North Sea, but it's not of the halcyon days of the 1990s in terms of throwing money at it. It needs to be a sustainable business model.
I think we've seen what's happened in the last 3 years. When I think of the economic climate, I think of people and the people who have lost their jobs, who've been displaced out of the industry, and we're looking at approximate figures of over 120,000. Myself and Jake and our colleagues in GMB, although the numbers have decreased, we still deal with the occasional short numbers of redundancies. There is not large numbers of people being directly re-employed. However, if a strategy of maximising economic recovery with the cooperation of the clients, the contractors, the government, the workforce and the unions, there's no reason why we can't plan for the next 20 or 30 years to maximise the best value for everybody concerned, and that includes yourselves as the workforce, so that you can then plan what it is ahead in terms of the influx of younger men and women that are going to come into the industry, because things will change. But given that it's recognised that there is still oil and gas out there to be recovered, then the reality is the message has been from Sir Ian Wood's report, a lot more cooperation and a lot less competition, with all pulling together, which is what we all want to do. And the people who should benefit the most from that, not just the clients, but everybody, including contractors and more importantly, the workforce and their families.
There's another question, which I think is actually more of a concern, which is that it sounds as though the companies are trying to make the permanent retained contract the main contract. So, and then to tie that in with some other questions that have came in, if somebody's selected by their employer to go on this contract type, is there a way they can opt out of it if it's not something they want to do? Will they be able to continue in their current one?
So, I mean, fundamentally, if all the stars align and your position is selected for a permanent retained contract and you're offered it, you don't have to take it. You can stay and be paid the way you are. I mean, that is not the intent is not in any way an underhand attempt to try and get people on worse terms and conditions. If you look at this in the round, you look at the overall package, it is genuinely an attempt to try and get some stability and permanency of employment to people who at the moment are, on rolling notice and laid off on a regular basis. We're trying to address that.
I think the document's quite clear. This is only going to apply to ad hoc employees. So if there was any attempt by employers to try and move core people who are in regular rotations on this contract, that would be a breach of the agreement as far as we're concerned, if the agreement is accepted in terms of this ballot, which is why we are recommending, because this will move people away from the not knowing and the never never approach to being told that you are now, and the word permanent is in there, that you're permanently employed. And that opens up doors in terms of your negotiations with respect of proper planning for your future, proper plan in terms of your housing needs, your mortgage needs. When you go to the bank or go to your lender and they say, well, what's your employment status? You can then produce this contract and show that you're permanently employed and what your minimum earnings are going to be, which then moves the situation to your advantage rather than to your current disadvantage. Where we have seen over the last 2 or 3 years, practices being deployed by employers where, because of the pressures they were under from the clients, that they were paying people off because they couldn't afford to keep them on a retainer. And this hopefully then resolves this issue. And as we have indicated, moves towards accommodating more people on the 600. And that does not mean accommodating people who are currently on regular rotations and are core employees. It's aimed specifically at those people who are on the short-term ad hoc contracts.
I think if I just add in there, the number 600 came as a representative of 20% of the workforce that are currently employed on an ad hoc basis. And as we've said around the room today, that 600 is the start. We would then look to increase that 600 figure over the next coming years. It kind of takes us to a place where we'll have 3 main different contracts of employment, either your core contract, your ad hoc contract, and the permanent retained contract sitting there in the middle. I don't think that it'll ever get us away from ad hoc workforce, because the nature of our industry will always need to upman for certain specific projects. But the permanent retained contract, just as we've all said, provides for a period of stability where we don't have a core contract to offer at the moment. What is being offered is on an ad hoc basis. When that work dries up, the natural thing is that we're then paying off. Whereas the permanent retained contract would allow us to keep that individual permanently employed until the next piece of work comes in.
Just another point on the permanent retained contract. What we're trying to do is bring about a cost saving to the industry so that we can put some more money in your pocket, because if you tie it in with everything else that's going on, the connected competence, the simplification model, the step change, we're trying to reduce the amount of times you're able to do inductions, the training you're able to do. You should be able to move around the entire North Sea with your employer on various contracts and not have to do any additional training or induction training. So the permanent retained group will hopefully see a greater efficiency, greater productivity, cost reduction, and hopefully in the long term see greater stability and security for you with that reflected in your pay.
We've got a question here about salaried employees and how are we going to demonstrate what will be applicable to them?
For a salaried based employee?
Yes, I think it's because we always speak about the hourly rate and things. How are we going to show that in the next OCPA?
This comes down to the fact, and I'll let you. You've got more salaried employees than we have, but this comes down to the fact that this OCA pay deal applies to everybody, to the OCA base element of their pay. So the question, I guess, is how are people who are on salaried remuneration going to identify how much of the pay is base OCA?
I can take that. So looking at your current job title, the current category that you fall into within the OCA partnership agreement, what you will then see in the agreement is what a base rate salary will look like. And as I mentioned earlier, the base rate salary will be made up of your hours worked, your field break, and your 28 days holiday pay. Each employer will be asked to identify what that is for their salary-based employees, and therefore then identify what enhancements are paid over and above that. Any increase, the 3.3% increase and the 2.5% increase from April 2019, will only be applied to the base element of it. So it's applied to your hours worked, and there have a knock-on effect into your holidays. So that's what we mean when we talk about your base pay, and therefore for each salaried person, you will receive an increase to your base pay element of your current salary package.
I think it's really important to point this out, that the OCA is only empowered to talk about the base pay. Anything that you're paid over and above that is an issue between you and your employer, and the OCA can't really get involved in that.
Okay. Another question on overtime. How will this affect overtime payments?
So the offer itself will have the 3.3% increase, and then the subsequent 2.5% increase will also be applied to any payment that is linked to D1. So any overtime payment that you receive, which is paid at the moment as your part night shift payment, will then also increase as a result, going up. With regards to the permanent retained contract, any hours that you work over and above, if that is allowed for in your current contract of employment, then that will remain exactly the same. There is no difference there.
Sorry everyone, I'm just looking through these questions just now. Just bear with me, I will get you another one.
It's worthwhile pointing out this is the first of 2 webinars. There's another one same time next week, probably with different attendees. You guys coming?
I think I'm signed up. You're on leave.
No, I'm on leave. It'll be John Boland that'll be here from Unite the Union. But I think it's a good point that people who maybe realise if there's a question that they didn't ask, they have an opportunity to do that then next Sunday. You know?
Could they not also send in emails and be responded to, either directly to their employer or to the OCA? I guess.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to take any comments directly at the OCA. For those of you that haven't seen it, the email address is info@ocainternet.com, and I'll respond to all your queries through that. Another question we've got here, will fixed term contracts be withdrawn as part of this current offer?
I don't see fixed term contracts being withdrawn. It'll still be used as a method of employment. As I mentioned earlier, we've got our core contracts and the introduction of the permanent retained contracts, and we'll still have ad hoc employees as well. Fixed term contracts will be used as a result of periods of work that we know that are coming in for a set period of time. It is hoped that the permanent retained contract would allow us to move away from the amount of fixed term contracts that we're actually issuing at the moment, but I don't see it being an end to fixed term contracts.
There's some queries coming through about making sure all the questions are answered. There's a lot of questions coming through just now, so I'm trying to field them as best we can, and if we don't get a chance to get around to them, because I'm aware we've only got a few minutes left, I will take them away separately and we will address them and get back to you with responses to them, just to make you aware we're not avoiding them on purpose. There is just so many coming through, I'm just struggling to get to them. There's one here, you've just said that we do not have to sign the permanent retained contract, you know, something that you would discuss with your employer. Does this mean that we will not get the pay increase?
No, the pay increase is independent of the type of contract that you're on. It applies to fixed term, it applies to core or rotational, it applies to the base element of all contracts that you're currently on, and so that is the case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's important to echo what Eric has said, that if you choose not to be on the permanent retained contract for the reasons like Jake said earlier, that you believe that you might want to work a different rotation because it suits you now, you've been a long time, I think you'll get the pay rise. You will get the pay rise on your hourly rate, irrespective of which, whether it's even a fixed term contract, you will get that percentage increase.
Okay, I've got a question here. How many companies at the moment fully comply with the current OCA, and how is this regulated?
Well, I mean, the OCA is a voluntary agreement. It isn't enforced across the North Sea. It's fair to say the vast majority of employees fall within the OCA in the North Sea, but not every company is in there, and that's as good an answer as I can give you.
Okay, thank you for that one. Sorry.
Clicking furiously.
I don't want to bore anybody with the technical side, but I'm reading it on a screen that's about this big. So that's why it's taken me so long. I'm really sorry. If you're on a permanent retained contract, is there a minimum amount of notice required before mobilising? So will the employer give, what notice would the employer give?
There was, and I'm frantically trying to remember and looking at my trade union.
I think we said about it's as is at the minimum 24 hours.
24 hours.
24 hours notice,
Minimum
yes.
at 24 hours, I think, what's in the OCA currently,
Yes.
and that's what would be applied. But as Irene's indicated earlier, if it's your intention to go away and leave, take holidays or whatever, and you notify your employer on those days will come out of that, and then you become available once you return from your leave. So it should all be managed.
Thank you, Jake. Mary.
There's another question about the release of workforce reps to future meetings. And I think from memory that we've never really had an issue with that, but I don't know if anybody else. I think everybody's committed.
I can speak from my company. We try to make people available when we can. If there are operational reasons why it cannot be done, that can happen sometimes. I believe that we're pretty good at that. If we're not, I'd like to know.
And similarly, I know I get a number of requests that come through for the reps across the Wood organisation, and again make every effort to try and make sure that they're released to attend. Operational reasons, however, do dictate where that answer is no, unfortunately.
I think there's another point there as well that we reflected on earlier, that we're going to have regular meetings, we're going to put them in the diaries, so we should be able to plan them ahead as it goes dark. We should be able to plan them ahead, and you should be able to notify employers and clients alike that meetings are taking place at certain times in the year. We'd like to get those fixed in the diary so that everybody can make the effort to be there.
Okay, I think we're going to have to bring it to a close now. We've only got about 4 minutes left, and I'm conscious that a lot of you will have made a specific 1 hour time slot available for this. So I think on behalf of everybody, thank you very much for taking the time to join and to answer and asking all the questions.
You want to around the table?
Yeah, we'll go final comments once more around the table.
I haven't really got any.
That was easy.
Okay, I shall really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and listen and answer and ask questions, and also those who didn't get the questions answered, obviously, as Amy has said, to email those questions in. That's the way myself and Jake and other union reps do it with the OCG webinar, and we'll do our best to help answer those questions. But more importantly, the offer is made to use as the workforce. Whether you're in the GMB, RMT or Unite, we strongly recommend the offer that you now vote and that you exercise your vote, but it's for you to consider whether that's a yes or a no. But we're suggesting to you, you should vote yes and buy into this and give us now 2 years, along with your representatives, then to sit down with the OCA post agreement, if it is accepted, to start working out the retained contract and other issues that need sorted out.
Well, Tommy's mentioned it, so I'll do another plug. Thursday night, 7 o'clock, live, the OCG webinar. If you've got issues that you haven't got on, you'll get them in on Thursday night. Tommy and I will be available.
And I'd like to echo the sentiments. Every vote counts. Come out and vote. It's really good to show that that you also care about this. If it's not clear, if you have questions, ask them. Don't not vote because it wasn't quite clear to you. And think about what this can do for the industry as a whole as well. We certainly are committed to implementing what we promise, and we look forward to that. We would like to go around every platform and speak to you individually. This is the way that we have to do this, so it's a bit impersonal, but it's as personal as we can make it. But if you have questions, reach out to the OCA, reach out to us directly. We'll try to answer all the questions, and please come out. Thank you. And
just a final word from me, again, as everyone else has said, your vote counts, whether it's a yes or it's a no. We want to hear that vote, and I'd like to thank everybody here today. As Amy mentioned up front, this is our first webinar, so hopefully it's come across to you as intended. Any questions that haven't been asked, please make sure that they get sent to Amy at the OCA, and we'll get answers out to you. There is a further webinar next Sunday, same time at 1 o'clock next Sunday. You'll have different members taking part in that webinar, but you have got the opportunity to ask any outstanding questions at that point as well. We are planning a series of communications out to all employees, and the next one will be tomorrow, which will have a copy of this webinar. So for those colleagues that were unable to dial in today, they will also be able to get an opportunity to listen to it and hear the answers that were given to all the questions that you have very kindly raised. So from me, thank you very much. I'll hand back to Amy.
I don't think I've got anything else to say other than thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you have a nice rest of your Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.